Huel Black did not work for me as a nutritional shake. I think here is why. It seems to come down to the protein content. If I eat a meal and then I am not satiated enough such that I would want to eat again, then this is not something that's very useful. And the question is then whether if I eat more of the same thing, whether this then leads to higher satiety, and then basically the hunger eventually dissolves. What I have been able to do in the last couple of years is find out that if I increase my protein intake to seemingly ridiculous amounts, that this then, the satiety comes and the feeling of hunger goes away. Now, 2 years ago I first ordered Huel Black. I didn't really think about the normal version of Huel, since this comes with more carbs and less protein. And since I have been doing resistance training since age 12, I have been also focusing on protein, at least since my adulthood. Now, the macros of a bag of Huel you find here. So we have about 21 grams of fat. Once it goes into focus, we have about 21 grams of fat, then 15 grams of carbohydrates. Now here the concept of net carbohydrates seems to make sense. So if we deduct the fiber content, we then have around 6.7 grams of net carbohydrates, which means that the fiber is actually something that is not really digestible, but it is still counted as carbs. So if you take them out, then this seems to be what carbs are left for the body to use as energy. Now the protein is at 46 grams, which one might say is fairly high. Also, Huel now has a protein powder, and this protein powder is even higher in protein content, but nonetheless is a complete meal. I didn't try this though, since this is already kind of on the more expensive side, I would say, compared to an alternative like this vegan plant protein powder, which if one compares the ingredient list, which I recently did again with basically a table, then one realizes that these are actually somewhat very similar. And so I have been again switching to this year and having now this year as the protein powder. I wanted something that is, it's not that I wanted something, my body wanted something that is closer to kind of like something like a meal shake. And so I tested a couple of things, and it seems to be the case, and this also has been true when I basically switched from this year to my custom milkshakes. So this here is such a fine product, I think, but it doesn't work for me. And it doesn't work for me because maybe I have just too high protein requirements, or I don't want that much fat in my diet. So, and it's not, of course it's not like the 21 grams of fat would be very far off, but what now seems to be the macronutrient split that my body seems to prefer is about basically most of it protein, and then I add egg powder, which I have here. And if I then add the egg powder, I add it in a portion of basically 1 to 2 2 scoops of protein. So if I take, let's say I just want to make a milkshake that consists out of 3 scoops, and I'm referring to the bulk scoops, which are 70 milliliters, then this results in a macronutrient split of about 17 grams of fat at least, and I assume that much of the rest is protein, since I don't add many carbs from the egg powder, and the main carbs that are found in the vegan plant protein powder are also not that high. So I do have 4.6 grams of carbs in there, minus the 3.2 grams of fiber, resulting in 1.4 grams of net carbs, which is significantly lower than the Huel bag. And so my brain seems to be more stable if I have less carbs in my diet. Now there also could be an argument for basically optimizing physical performance, and this also seems to be something if I have more carbs that I can properly digest, not something like in my case milk sugar, which I seem to have somewhat of a reaction to. And so if I have carbs in my diet, then well. But if I don't have carbs in my diet, what I also can do is after a meal just continue to work instead of having to go for an additional 10-minute walk. So why did Huel again not work for me? I think that the macronutrient ratio is just not sufficiently high in protein, which means if I would take this, then I would reduce it in fat. I would go down to about maybe 16 grams of fat or 17 grams of fat. Maybe there is also something very special about the eggs. My body seems to crave them, and I eat lots of eggs. And also if I don't eat meat, I seem to eat lots of eggs. So maybe that's something that is special to me. Now there might also be this argument where if you in the future have something like Huel and you are able to individualize it, Then you have kind of the custom milkshake that is then auto-delivered. The promise of Huel, I think, is that you could have optimum nutrition delivered to your doorstep, and you set it up once, and then it is also somewhat financially useful as a decision, as you cut down on the time cost. I still have to now mix my own milkshakes, and this also takes time. For example, I, as of today, had to get this package additionally because this is the cheapest egg powder that sells on Amazon, whereas the egg powder that auto delivers with Amazon Subscribe and Save does not come to my doorstep.